because strong rains where I am and the electricity is unstable. So will you share your screen, Monty?
Can you see my screen?
Yes, coming. It's coming.
Very clear, very clear.
Yeah, full
Okay.
screen. We could make it. Can you make it full screen? Is better.
How's that?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Very clear, very
Very
clear.
good.
Okay. So first I want to say good evening and thank you to our host Sung Ho. And I want to say hello to old friends from the group. I recognize several faces and I have a lot of good memories with this community. So thank you to Sung Ho. Thank you to Bernard for moderating. Welcome to Michelle as the intern from the University of Richmond. And I think I want to begin by prefacing my comments with two things. First, I am speaking only for myself, not representing any other organization, although my employer is the University of Richmond. And secondly, because of the nature of this group, I'll just say quite honestly, I seek to come from a position of love and compassion in the international community. And it is my belief that core values like love and compassion are fundamental to driving world affairs. With that said, I'm going to talk to you now about some of my thoughts. And one question that is driving today's conversation is on the screen. And the question is, what lies ahead for US democracy under Trump's leadership? And how might that impact the global order, right? So there's a lot going on here. And I've prepared some slides, but at any moment, if there's a question or comment, please feel free to raise your hand or simply call out, and I'm happy to engage in discussion. I'm also getting over a cold, so I hope I can sound as clear as possible. Okay, so to begin, um, can you see my new slide I've adjusted on the screen?
It's clear,
Okay.
Yeah,
clear.
it's right, right. Yeah.
Okay, and so to begin, the big question that many of us are wrestling with now in the United States is to what extent is democracy fading or backsliding or vanishing in the American experience? And if we think about American democracy, basically, the United States has a federalist system. We have an executive led by the president. We have a legislative branch led by our Congress, our House of Representatives and Senate. And we have a judicial branch led by our Supreme Court and various courts throughout the 50 US states. And the idea of American democracy is based on the idea of checks and balances among these three branches of government. The idea being that if the executive is too aggressive, then at least one of the other parties will balance against the other. Um, and for the most part in the American experience, I think we could argue that that has worked. That through most of American history, when one branch of government has been overly excessive, another branch of government has in time risen up to maintain these checks and balances. And that's sort of one of the core ideas of our federalist government. The concern now, however, is under the administration of President Trump that those checks and balances are now vanishing. And they're vanishing at a very aggressive rate with which the other branches of government are not able to keep up. And so, on the one hand, even though we are seeing a number of local justices speaking up, for example, on immigration rights, the speed and rapidity of the executive branch of government is such that the judicial branch is sort of being left behind. In which case, we could look to the legislative branch of government, and the legislative branch of government is controlled by the Republican Party. But for the most part, there has been muted silence by the Republican establishment in Washington, D.C. And all of this has created a situation in which the executive branch of government is steaming full steam ahead in such a way that different scholars of political science, they are now using a phrase to define American democracy. And that phrase is called competitive authoritarianism. This is a phrase that I've learned from some of my other colleagues in political science, especially from comparative politics. And the phrase comparative authoritarianism has a definition. And competitive authoritarianism is a system in which political parties compete in elections, but there is the systematic abuse of an incumbent's power that tilts the playing field against the opposition. And so, what this means is the executive is so strong and so ferocious in executive orders, in their ability to control the agenda, that the other parties in power don't have a chance to balance against what we're seeing. And to put it quite simply, um, the way I would define American democracy now is based on fear. Everyone is afraid in the United States to speak up. If you are an American university, you are afraid. If you are a business leader, you are afraid. If you are somebody wealthy, you have a lot to lose if you dare to challenge President Trump and the Republican Party he represents. And so I think what we're seeing now in the United States is, on the one hand, this idea of competitive authoritarianism, but that's simply a theory. And so a counter argument might be, well, if we wait in 2 years, we're going to have the midterm elections, and we can elect more Democrats who can therefore push the Republicans out of power. And that's certainly something that many people are hoping for and waiting for. But the rebuttal or the response to that is that within 2 years, many of the democratic institutions that we hold dear and value today may simply be gone. And at the same time, if you look at the allies that President Trump is working with, people like Elon Musk, who is the wealthiest person in human history, they have substantial resources to use against the Democrats as they vie for the 2026 midterm elections. So, on the one hand, I think we could make the case that we are currently in a competitive authoritarian environment in the United States. That's number one. And number two, we are seeing the decline, the backsliding, the disintegration of US democracy as we know it. But the hope is that if there can be resilience, maybe this summer, maybe this fall, maybe next year, if, for example, the Democratic Party could somehow rise up. I keep wondering, why doesn't Barack Obama rise up? Or somebody who has the charisma, who has the experience to meet President Trump, unless that person rises up, I think what we're going to see is the continued backsliding of the United States, And at the same time, there are many, many unintended effects of this that we're going to see around the world. I'm worried, quite frankly, that we're going to see the rise of more competitive authoritarianism all around the world, including in South Korea and in other countries that believe they're democracies. But if you have a charismatic, populist, authoritarian leader rise up, all of these democratic institutions that we care about can vanish very, very quickly. For those of you who know me, or those of you who've thought more about the American experience, uh, my understanding of American history is very, very sobering. As I understand American history, the United States was founded on what we say are two sins: the sin of enslavement of African Americans and the sin of the genocide of the Native Americans who were here. If you look at those two defining attributes of the American experience, I think you can understand very clearly that America is one of the most violent, dominating countries in the history of Western civilization. And now we have a leader who is, quite frankly, I think, tapping into these darker tendencies that have always been a part of the American experience. So, in a nutshell, I don't think America right now is a real democracy. We are backsliding to competitive authoritarianism, but I hope quite sincerely that the opposition party, the Democratic Party, will do something. We're not seeing anything right now, and for me, that's very concerning and very disappointing. And if anything, we're seeing the spread of widespread fear. And when you are afraid, you know you are no longer in a democracy. Let me pause for a moment and just see if there are any questions or comments before I continue my presentation.
Your editorial cartoon comes from Global Times. The editorial
Oh,
cartoon.
yeah,
Page
I
12.
I believe so. I just found it today online, actually.
Yeah. Isn't that the newspaper owned by the Communist Party of China?
I'm not sure, actually.
Anyway, thank you, Monty.
Other questions or comments before I jump into the rest of the presentation?
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, so very briefly, there's a few questions when you probably cover them in the rest of your presentation. But I was quite intrigued when you mentioned there that the rich, the Elon Musks, for the Jeff Bezos, are also, well, certainly Jeff Bezos, the Amazon turnaround. Do you think that's kind of related to this when he put the tariff issue and took it off? Is that part of what you're talking about here, the fear in the oligarchs, the billionaires? That was an example, or is that unique to Amazon?
Yeah, thanks for the question. To be honest, I don't think I can speak that intelligently to tariffs, but what I can say is, you mentioned Jeff Bezos, we're
Mm,
looking at Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg.
mm,
Quite frankly, we are in an oligarchy.
mm,
And in an oligarchy, or I guess we call it a big tech oligarchy.
mm,
And so you have these wealthy billionaires or trillionaires, and they are cowing up to President Trump in a way that tells us once again, we are no longer in a democracy.
mm,
And so whether it's this tariff this week or something next week, or the strange South African narrative right now
mm,
that I think
mm.
is meant to placate Elon Musk,
Yes,
which
yes.
has deeply hyper white supremacist overtones.
Mhm,
I think we're seeing a president, a narcissistic president who is doing everything in his power simply to feed his ego and placate his cadre of
mm,
wealthy technocrats.
yeah,
Um, and the sad thing is, it's working.
yeah.
And it's working brilliantly. And so,
Mhm,
I might be critical of President Trump for the rest of this presentation, but tactically speaking, I think he's politically moving in an extremely brilliant way as an authoritarian leader. Strangely, many people I know tend to look down on President Trump and they think of him as stupid and things like that. I don't think that's anything farther from the truth. And if you look at the tactical brilliance of everything he's done in the past 100 days, notwithstanding the fact that a lot of these policies are from Project 2025, and these are obviously not his own policies, he is thrown up the chessboard and he's rewriting the rules of the game. And to me, that is a sign of tactical brilliance.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, let me go back to the slides. And I also want to preface that some of these slides are from a teach-in that I gave at the University of Richmond. And some of the slides I also am borrowing from a colleague, Professor Stephen Long, who also presented at the teach-in. Although once again, all of these ideas are mine alone to take responsibility for. And so another question that I've been pondering over, and that a lot of my colleagues are very worried about, is to what extent do the policies and the direction of the Trump administration threaten what we call the international liberal order? And what I mean about the international liberal order is after World War II, after the events of the Second World War, the United States was left standing as the great superpower. And it remade the international system in its image, like the hand of God touching Adam. And this hand of God had three things it created. The idea that democracy and human rights should be institutionalized and codified. The idea that there should be trade around the world. The idea that the more trade there is, there's the more peace around the world. And the idea that through international institutions, through international organizations like the United Nations, like the rise of the European Union, you can have the recipe of international stability. Now, obviously, this idea of the international liberal order also goes back to the thinking of the German philosopher Immanuel Kant and all of the political scientists like Bruce Russett at Yale and others who substantiated this theory in thinking that if you want world peace, then a recipe that you need for it is this liberal order of democracy, of trade, and of international institutions. Oh, and I'm looking in the chat box. Let me hold on. Let me pull up that up for a moment. Uh, yeah, it's a comment about democracy as an empty word. And we have created a caste system. Manuel, may I invite you to jump in and share more? This is a great comment. Well, Manuel writes, voters prefer to look at the economy rather than the empty word of democracy. Yeah, very, very powerful comment. Thank you. Um, so back to this idea of the liberal order, this is what the United States put together after World War II. It was very self-serving. It worked. But now what we're seeing, I would argue, is the collapse of the international liberal order. And many of my colleagues feel this way as well. And one leg of the international liberal order has been the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. And as we speak, the mission of NATO, the essence of NATO, I think has been profoundly jeopardized. NATO has been 75 years of collective security, spearheaded by the United States. Its goal was to contain initially the threat of the Soviet Union. And in more recent years, it has been a tool of crisis prevention and management around the world and collective security, helping keep stability in the Western world. If you look at the screen, you'll see two quotes. Let me give you a minute to look at the quotes. And what we see are two quotes, one from President Ronald Reagan and the other from former President Joe Biden. And if you look at both of the quotes about NATO, they're essentially the same. President Reagan said, "We hear that somehow the United States is being mistreated by our friends and allies. The argument that they use is that our allies are not sharing the burden of our defense equitably. Well, we must always remember the very real burden our allies will bear that we never will. We must remember our allies perform a role that geography has forced upon them. They are literally on the front lines. Their soldiers, their children, their homes, and their civilization itself hang in the balance every day." This is what President Reagan said about countries in NATO. And President Biden said, more than 30 years later, the promise of NATO, that an attack on one is an attack on all, keeps American families safe. It's that simple. Any individual who calls into question the durability of that vow is a danger to our security. That has been the dominant thinking of the United States until President Trump. And now, under President Trump, we have a radical reimagining of what NATO should be. And as we speak, it is very unclear what the future of NATO will be in the future. Historically, NATO has withstood enlargement over time. It has withstood the costs of burden sharing economically over time. And it has adapted to out of area missions outside of Europe, and it has survived. Um, Originally, NATO in this color-coded map of the world was quite small, and it contained only a handful of European states. But as you look at the color-coded map expanding over time from the 1950s and 90s and 2000s, you see NATO has enlarged and it has survived. It has, in fact, survived its initial mission of containing the Soviet Union. So NATO has been resilient historically. It's done quite well for the past 75 years. In terms of burden sharing, I don't know how well you can see it on your screen, but this is an infographic of the United States and Poland and the United Kingdom and Germany and Canada. And if you look at the infographic over time, you see that more and more the United States has contributed less money to NATO, while Poland, the UK, Germany, and Canada have contributed a little bit more. So NATO has been better at spreading the burden and sharing the costs over time. It has withstood that challenge as well. And I think I see a comment in the chat box. Let me take a look at that. Yeah, it looks like Manuel's got some great comments going. Manuel writes, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, NATO made no sense, but the United States maintained it in order to stick its nose into European affairs. That's right, to maintain US hegemony, of course. And Manuel writes, NATO must disappear. Well, that is precisely the question on the table. And there are many who are wondering if that's what President Trump's endgame is. Uh, and the third stressor that NATO has survived over time is out of area missions. NATO, during the ongoing war on terror, has supported the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan. It has supported the war in Iraq, and operations in Libya. And NATO has withstood that. NATO is strong. But now the big question has been, what will happen under President Trump? If you see the screen before you, these are a number of different headlines about President Trump. And you can see some of the headlines read, has Trump already killed NATO? Trump officials pitched Zelensky on U.S. owning 50% of Ukraine's rare earth minerals. If NATO members don't pay, the US won't defend them. And this is the big challenge now with NATO. Um, what should the United States do? President Trump, for whatever reason that I don't fully understand, is always very warm and optimistic about Putin. It might be that President Trump simply likes authoritarian leaders and is looking down on the West and looking up to Putin because he's a strong man, right? Um, so all of this rhetoric about NATO and about Ukraine, it flies in the face of the history of the international liberal order. Trump enjoys being mercurial, unpredictable, and so I have no clue what's going to happen in the future. But in reflecting with my colleague, Professor Long, who is sharing some of these ideas with me, he was suspecting, and this is a slide he shared, that if we're looking at this contest between the United States and NATO versus Putin, it looks like Putin has the upper hand. And if Russia represents authoritarianism and the demise of democracy, what does it mean when we have the president of the United States essentially either looking up or bowing down to this Russian dictator? It doesn't make any sense for the international liberal order. So, with regard to NATO, I think we could make the case that we are in serious trouble with the international liberal order, let alone other international security agreements around the world that the United States is connected to. Obviously, because we're in Korea, I'm thinking about the status of forces agreement with South Korea and the United States, and obviously with Japan and the United States. I think all of that now is potentially up in the air as we have the collapse of democracy in the United States and an authoritarian president who doesn't care. So, a few other slides that I want to share, and then we can open it up for discussion, is the effects of American legitimacy. And some of this other research goes back to my doctoral work on anti-Americanism. I'm deeply fascinated by anti-Americanism around the world. And so I was looking for some data. It's still a little early in President Trump's second term to find enough public opinion data. But here's an infographic from March on how European allies view President Trump. And the question is, how big of a threat to peace and security in Europe do you consider President Trump? Very big, fairly big, don't know, not much or not at all. And if you look at the infographic, you see the colors are blood red and bright, bright red. The British, the Germans, the Spanish, the French, the Italians, they all agree that President Trump is a threat to peace and security in Europe. These are America's quote unquote best friends. And this is how they feel about the United States. I haven't seen any recent public opinion about South Korea, and I wonder where that falls in. But clearly, the data are suggesting the world is very concerned, if not, frankly speaking, afraid. This is some data from the Pew Research Center that I put together on confidence in the US president to do the right thing in world affairs. And the data are tabulated from 2003 all the way to the end of Biden's term. What you'll notice in the infographic is a big spike during the presidency of Barack Obama and during the Obama years when around the world, pro-Americanism and American multilateralism were very well received around the world. And upon the election of President Trump in his first term, you see this nosediving of confidence in America to do the right thing. The Pew Research Center data, I don't think are available yet for 2025, but I strongly predict that we will see once again a nosedive in the world's confidence in the United States to do the right thing in world affairs. So all of this speaks to my interest on anti-Americanism. And just to review, anti-Americanism is a feeling, and it's a reaction to what the United States is, that is who we are, and a reaction to what the United States does, that is America's actions and behavior. And different scholars say there are many different kinds of anti-Americanism. There could be liberal anti-Americanism, which is criticizing America for being a hypocrite. For example, we're arresting college students right now. That is deeply hypocritical to the values of America. Another kind of anti-Americanism is called sovereign nationalist anti-Americanism, which is basically when other world leaders use anti-American sentiment to get elected. And we saw that recently, I think, in Canada, when the new Prime Minister of Canada ran on an anti-Trump or sort of anti-American platform. And then we have radical anti-Americanism, which is things like 9/11, when you are so angry with the United States, you want to do the United States physical harm or physical violence. In this collapse of the international liberal order, we have seen the destruction of the US Agency for International Development. That is now gone. And so all of the funding to fight HIV/AIDS around the world, all of the funding to fight infectious diseases like Ebola around the world, that's over. That's gone. The United States, I think, was doing good, but under President Trump, all of that has been dismantled. The United States Institute for Peace, USIP, its mission is peace. The website of USIP has been closed. My friends who work at USIP, they have nowhere to go. The Voice of America, which for decades and decades would have radio broadcasts around the world talking about things like democracy and freedom, that is being shut down. So all of these tools, all of these instruments of America's international influence, they are being amputated. And again, I don't see any strategic reason for this because the United States made the international liberal order in its image, like the hand of God touching Adam, and we are cutting off that hand as we speak. Um, it makes no sense to me, but this is the direction the United States now is going in. Uh, I went to the USIP website, and this is what the homepage looked like. It's gone. All of these institutions that were based on peace and freedom and compassion, they are now over. So even though we're only 100 days into President Trump's administration, I think we can say that democracy is fading away, the international liberal order is being destroyed, and keep in mind, America is historically a country that has been founded on violence. And we are being led by a leader who is tapping into these sentiments. So another form of research that I look at is called soft power. And soft power, it's coined after the late Joseph Nye, actually, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago. Joseph Nye at Harvard University. He defined soft power as the ability to persuade others by virtue of who you are, by your values, by your attraction, rather than coercing others or forcing others to do what you want them to do. I would argue now that we're going to see a skyrocketing of anti-Americanism around the world, we are going to see the destruction of American soft power. Other nations will rise up and fill this gap, and all of this is deeply hurting to the US national interest in the international liberal order. So who likes Trump? Who is supporting Trump around the world? Again, the data are still limited because we're only 100 days into the Trump administration. But based on some earlier research I conducted, this is an infographic from President Trump's first administration. And the countries that are color coded in red, those are the countries that became more pro-American during the first 2 years of President Trump's presidency. And if you see the countries, they are Russia, they are Belarus, they are Kyrgyzstan, they are the non-democracies. They are the authoritarian regimes. So who likes America? It's not the democracies. It's the authoritarian regimes that are now happy with President Trump. It's the authoritarian regimes that are happy with the collapse of the international liberal order. So, what are the consequences of all of this? I think President Trump is inspiring a rise of populist authoritarian leaders around the world. We're going to see more borders close around the global north, shutting out the global south. We're going to see the rise of hyper-nationalist white supremacy. And we're going to see a whole generation of young authoritarian leaders who are inspired by President Trump and who, in my opinion, will not be afraid to use extreme forms of violence to hurt people in the global south. In a nutshell, I'm very worried we're going to see the rise of more hyperviolence in the near future. And because we have no opposition now in the United States, I don't think anything will stop it. This is not an evil science fiction movie. This is real. Um, as I close my presentation, once again, I just want to remind everybody, I am a pacifist. I believe in love. I believe in compassion. I believe in the power of forgiveness. But I see the collapse of democracy in the United States. I see the imploding of the international liberal order. And I see the rise of an extremely violent United States with 7,000 nuclear weapons, not afraid to use them. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to open it up for Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Today's moderator, Bernard, he informed me the connection is not stable, okay, and I couldn't see him here on the screen, okay, so until he returned back to this forum, I would like to facilitate, okay, as a moderator, okay. Thank you, Professor Monti Datta, okay. It's a very important topic and very timely, okay. So here, okay, Professor Datta is very concerned about the incumbent, the administration, the presence, the what the authoritative, this authoritarian, the leadership or something, the what the democracy, okay, the future trend or something. Okay, so we raised already hands. Okay, I'd like to invite. First the volunteer. Okay, Professor Poporsky. Okay, you first.
Thank you, Sung Ho, and thank you, Professor Monti. I fully agree with you. It's a time to raise our voices in concern with the situation in the United States. As you said, the data is there and you presented it brilliantly. There is no doubt, absolutely no doubt, what this administration wants. It's different from the first term of Donald Trump. It is effectively, I will compare it with what Mussolini and Hitler did back in 1920s and 1930s, grabbing power, although through elections, and both Mussolini and Hitler did made it through elections. But after the elections, they effectively destroyed the institutions, the independence of the judiciary, the independence of the media. They challenged the constitutions. They established rule of the powerful and of the rich. Exactly the same. It's very similar to fascism and Nazism. and that's why we need to get united. We need to speak. I'm not so pessimistic, to put it this way, exactly because I believe in the institutions, in the rule of law, in the American judiciary and independent media, and the professors, the universities. All these voices are very important to be united and to resist the slippery slope to fascism that obviously nobody wants. In terms of global support, you have it, Monty. You have a global support. Everybody in the world thinks about. I have a lot of friends in United States. I speak to them, and what makes me a bit optimistic is see the elections in Canada, Australia, Romania last weekend all went against Trump. People in the world vote against such regimes. So it's not that Trumpism is winning. It's possibly an exception. And we need still to be strong, to resist, to be united. And let's hope after 3.5 years we have a new president. I don't have another question. I just want to offer full support for my friends in United States in those very difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lin. Okay, rather than question, it's kinds of his comments and his supporting this what Dr. Monti's Datta's what his idea. Okay, okay. Any response, Monti?
Yeah, I'd say first of all, thank you for the support. It's good to hear other perspectives outside the United States. Many of my colleagues and I are very worried and sometimes very depressed. And to your point, I think quite frankly, we are seeing President Trump mirror many of his policies after Hitler and Mussolini, and these are hyper-fascist policies, and they're working. Bullying always works. I remember visiting the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles, which is about the Holocaust. And I visited the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. a few months ago. And the whole theme of both museums is the bully takes control. And I think we're seeing President Trump do that, and it's working very, very well. But to your point, other Western countries like Canada, they had their election. Um, my fear is that militarily, the United States is so powerful. If Trump chooses to have more militarized conflicts, um, I see no country standing in its way. And so if the bully chooses to threaten the use of a nuclear weapon, for example, or if the bully chooses to do something physically horrific, I don't know who could stop that. But short of that, short of physical violence, I think politically, ideally, other countries like Canada could help push back and uplift the international liberal order. And then ideally, we wait 4 more years. But I worry in 4 more years, we're going to have Trump 2.0 or Trump 3.0 because I know many young people who love Trump in the United States. And they love the anger. They love the hatred. And this is who America really is. Remember, I said at the beginning, America was founded on two sins, on genocide and enslavement, and that's by design. Um, and so I worry there will be other leaders who are equally violent, who are excited to gain power and control. I don't want to believe this thinking, but this is just what arises in my intuition.
Okay, thank you, Monty. Okay, I remember Mary, but who raised earlier. Okay, Mary, would you like to first? Okay, I'll give you.
Sure. Okay. So, so first, I want to thank you so much. That was that it's very difficult to approach that topic, and you did it brilliantly. I don't disagree with anything you said. Well, I want to elaborate on what you said, if I could. I feel as though we have two sides to the coin in the United States. I think we need to recognize the type of philosophy and belief system and compassion that you represent. You're not the only one. I would say a good percentage. I like to hope at least 50% of the Americans in the United States feel the same way. The attitude, the care, the support for nonviolent approaches, efforts to seek nonviolent approaches. I see that as a really strong tension now in the United States. Many of us are absolutely shocked by the appeal of the more of the bully aspect of the United States. And we're actually shocked by many young men finding the link between crazy wrestling matches and what they call manliness. So I'll start with that. So I think I'd like to add a little more hope to the discussion, because I genuinely believe there's a very strong support for, let's call it soft power.
Soft power.
And so, but you raised such an important point. Bullying and hard power versus soft power. Soft power values diversity and different perspectives, and it's so hard to unify the groups that are in this collective, I'll call it. So I don't want to talk too long. But that's one point I want to make very quickly. What's interesting to me is the Pope, Trump. The new Pope, Leo the 14th, Trump, both sides of the United States. So, and I'd like to add one more point to this conversation. Right, I mean, I could say so much, but I'd just like to add one more. I don't think Trump is as brilliant as the impression he gives in the beginning. What is fascinating for me about the speed and the efficiency and these executive orders, et cetera, that came through in the first 100 days it's the combination of three things. It's the combination of charismatic, bully, appealing, crazy, entertaining leadership. It's money, which you have just pointed out. I mean, Elon Musk goes to Pennsylvania for the election, and he's got contests. How would you like to win $1 million? I mean, he's $250 million for the election. That's the second. So it's the charismatic leadership, it's the money, it's the economic power of that, and as you rightly point out, the way these billionaires are lining up. But the third piece is behind the screen, and that is it has to do with the key person is someone named Russell Voigt. He's OMB, Office of Management and Budget. He was at OMB before in the first administration. He worked with Heritage Foundation. He was involved with Project 2025. He is the equivalent of a CEO of a company and the CFO. He has been involved in all the executive orders, but he's behind the scenes. Super, super, super organized, knows how the bureaucracy worked before, absolutely determined to dismantle it. So you have those three, and it's this powerful, powerful, destructive combination of forces that have converged like a perfect storm to me. And I just want to point out, so Trump, if you listen to Trump speak at his speeches, sometimes he just dances. Or he rattles on about, you never know what's going to come out of his mouth. Whales are bumping into wind turbines, etc. But I'll add one. I could go on for hours. I just want to add one more point. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not overwhelming you. But don't forget the philosophy that someone like myself represents is very much of a ecological, we're all on this beautiful, delicate earth together, protect the earth. Climate change is a serious issue for all of us. We have to cooperate to address that serious issue. So we are making great progress in transforming energy systems. It's amazing what is happening right now. Don't underestimate that. that is a huge threat to the most powerful industry on earth, which is oil and fossil fuels. And so this whole woke and interest in more integrated versus nationalist approaches, it's this question of how narrow the radius of concern is, and the defense of it's power defense is what it is. So all right, that's enough. I've said enough.
Okay.
But you can see there's a lot of thought going into this from the United States. It's a shocking situation, but those are a few additions I'd like to add. But I really appreciate what you just said, and I appreciate meeting you. It's nice to know you're there. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Okay, from perspective of scholar and one citizen of the U.S. citizen. Okay, thank you, Mary. Okay, Monti, still do you want to respond briefly or?
Yeah, I really appreciate what Mary Jo shared, and I mean, I think in the end, the only energy that can beat this energy of fear and bullying is the energy of love and compassion. But the problem now is that fear is so prevalent, and fear is such an authentic emotion. It is a basic human emotion. And so any leader who manipulates fear is tapping into a kind of primal truth, you know. Um, but I look to my heroes, you know, like Martin Luther King Jr., like Gandhi, and they were all channeling a higher energy, and it worked. It worked to overthrow the British Empire. It worked, at least temporarily, to dismantle white supremacy in the United States. Um, but what I struggle with is how do you encourage the love to rise up when people are so afraid? And that's where I don't have the easy answer. But I think to your point, Mary Jo, I think it is maybe in the environmental movement or in tapping into a sense of community so that we can care about one another and somehow tap into that energy. So I really appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, move to Professor Miki Oishi. Okay, our regular member and regular participant. Okay, in the discussion. Okay, your turn,
Okay.
Miki.
Okay, thank you, Sung-ho-san, and thank you, Monty, for your good presentation. And I'm afraid I will provide a certain different perspective to your understanding of Trump administration. To be frank, I have been kind of supporting him since 2016 presidential election. So there have been largely, not all, not fully, largely I have been supportive with Trump for maybe about 10 years, for the past 10 years. And it's quite difficult to explain why I ended up in this position because many things are involved, and actually, but maybe starting with maybe East Asia, Japan, and East Asia, Southeast Asia, and then Japan. In my view, this may be wrong, but Japan has been under some kind of colonial domination by the U.S. for a long time. And of course, after the defeat in the Second World War, then Japan has been subjected to the U.S. rule actually, and actually the U.S. military actually ruled Japan. This fact has been hidden for a long time, but now increasingly this one, because actually U.S. military ruled Japan, and then U.S. military called the Japanese Prime Minister or whatever the high official of the Japanese government and to instruct what to do, you know, and these are actually the reality in my understanding. And also you mentioned, you know, the democracy, liberal democracy, and maybe democracy, and also coupled with market economy and things, right? And then, and also I have been in global South countries for a long time, since 1990, and then I sort of absorbed the general attitude of the people in global south. And those people are kind of increasingly, aware of the global dominance, of the U.S. and the other Western countries. And this one, I think, that clearly happened. And since the so-called Russian special military operation, and I don't go into detail, but this incident opened up the eyes of the global south people, and now the Russia is kind of spearheading the people's struggle, the struggle in the global south people to throw away the yoke of the neo-colonialism, actually. So this is my basic understanding. And for the the Western countries and also U.S., when it comes to Trump is not particularly the ideology oriented, right? And his background is business, and everything can be solved, maybe according to him. Every problem can be solved by business, maybe a big investment, and then the investment may absorb the conflict, whatever, right? And also for Japan, for me, this is maybe the greatest chance for Japan to be really independent, because Trump is basically don't care whether Japan is a de facto colonial country or independent, in my view. And also Trump also demanding the Japanese government to provide more money to U.S. for U.S. protection of Japan. And if not, and maybe Trump would withdraw military. I welcome it very, very well, because this is a good opportunity for Japan to become really independent. So from that standpoint, I largely support what Trump is doing, at least international. I don't know what's happening within US, yeah? But and also another issue is that I think that maybe kind of the difference between the globalism and the nativism. Globalism versus nativism. This is a grassroots idea. Many people discuss nativism very negative way, but I would like to put some positive light on nativism. My position is open nativism. Grassroots, deeply rooted to the local traditional culture, but open means, and people welcome the outsiders, but they should follow the local traditions and culture. Yeah? This is my idea of open nativism. And I feel this, I think Trump is maybe something similar to this one, yeah? And definitely anti-globalism. And although you may say, and maybe Trump may destroy the variety of culture difference, whatever, but I feel rather differently. Yeah? So anyway, so the Trump, I'm not very sure, about Trump, yeah? But the fact that Trump had a natural affinity with Putin and Xi Jinping, and those people are authoritarian, right? According to you, right? But for me, especially Putin, yeah, I kind of respect Putin because of his religious background. And but anyway, and this is a very complicated area, yeah? So maybe I can't tell, and then in a short term, but at least from the perspective and some point of Japan and East Asia, I think Trump may become the peacemaker, and maybe Trump may and restore the dialogue with North Korean and the leader, yeah, right, Kim Jong-un, and he was doing that, but and somehow and failed. So for me, Trump is a peacemaker, at least in East Asia, and. I'm sorry to say this one, but this is my plan.
Okay. Mikio-san, it's not question, but your own, you just elaborate your perspective and your opinion, okay,
Yes, yes.
a little different perspective, okay. So how about Monti? Okay, your response. Mhm.
Yeah, well, I want to thank Mikio for your authenticity and your honesty, and I think you're just right. The United States has always had, at least since the end of World War II, a very strong agenda in controlling the fate of Japan and South Korea and the rest of the world. So you're quite right. The United States wrote the Constitution for Japan basically under General MacArthur. And so Japan is not yet free of American control. I don't think that'll change at all. I don't think America will withdraw from Okinawa. Um, I see a bully taking advantage of Japan even more under President Trump. But I appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, okay, Iwan, okay, your turn. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your talk this evening. So just very briefly to pick up on what's just been said, that this idea that Trump is an anti-globalist, we hear this a lot actually in Britain, where you have Reform UK, people like Nigel Farage, all anti-globalist, and they are the establishment. They are the ultimate in globalism. They have all the networks. They're billionaires. They are globalists, but they're portraying this kind of populist, man in the street, common sense, this idea. So it's very seductive. And I think this idea of pessimism, I mean, I'm not sure the data in the US, but this is very much a movement in Europe and certainly in Britain, the kind of younger generation, particularly males, are very attracted by this kind of big man theory for various reasons, maybe economic reasons, whatever. So the demographics, I think, are important here. And it's also interesting that many populists in different parts of Europe, especially, are looking at Trump and saying, "Look, you are our savior. If you're pro-Trump and you want countries like Britain to become the 51st state of the United States, despite the history between Britain and America, then that's a very patriotic thing to do." Okay, so it's a strange inversion of patriotism that you make yourself a colonial subject of another country, primarily because you're anti-liberal, you're anti-elite. And the irony is that these people who are following this agenda are being led by the people who are at the root of the global elite. They are the global elite. So I think there's some very kind of contradictory issues there. But on the first, well, my first question, I have one question domestic and the other international regarding Korea. Where are the Democrats? I think that's the fascinating thing from certainly European perspective. Where is Obama? Where's Kamala Harris? Where are the Democrats? We never hear what the opposition is doing. Is it the opposition just hoping things run out of steam and Trump just gets bored and wants to play golf? Or is it something a little bit more than that? So that's kind of my first question. And the second point, very interesting, you raised about NATO. So it's a really, really key area, certainly Asia Pacific. So I'm just wondering, what's your view if we see this rise of populism now, and US in the form of anti-multilateralism decides to leave NATO and maybe take Canada with it? I think this is part of the 51st state Canada issue, although that seems to have quietened down now since the election in Canada. Europeans basically take over NATO and maybe create a kind of European Union security organization that'll impact countries like Britain and Turkey, which are not in the EU, but are essentially European. So I'm just wondering whether the kind of dynamics here are suggesting that, okay, if NATO is going to go, what's necessarily the problem with that? That will release the European Union and European countries. And certainly in new areas like cybersecurity, which a lot of the European nations and Germany and even Poland are now plugging into, especially the Ukraine war, I think, has given a dynamic there. And on that question of Poland, actually, I was really interested to hear that data you had there about the expenditure in NATO. Korea and Poland have a very, very close relationship now. Korea is essentially subsidizing the Polish military, massive amounts of Korean military expertise going to Poland and indirectly into Ukraine. So I'm just wondering, I mean, you mentioned, I think earlier on the South Korean situation. We don't yet know because of the presidential election coming up. But I'd be interested to hear your comments on this. My own view is that President Yoon, the impeached president, was very, very close to Biden. So the Yoon-Biden relationship was very, very strong. So it's almost like a new president of Korea would almost have to go for Trump to make it very clear that that break has now happened with the impeached president. And if that's the case, if Korea goes more Trump, as the previous speaker said, that has big implications for Japan-Korea relationships and also with North Korea as well, which Trump seemed very, enamored to. I think that's certainly going to happen. I think within a year, but there'll be a North Korea-US summit emerging. So that's my kind of second question. So what about NATO? What about European Union? And what about this question of Korea-Japan relations and whether we are seeing a complete realignment within the Asia Pacific, where you have this weird situation where South Korea, North Korea, and Japan are kind of closer together. And then, of course, there's the role of China and Russia, because Russia has a very close relationship with North Korea now. So this whole issue could actually strengthen North Korea and play both sides. So that's my kind of, we don't know yet in Korea, but the election coming up could be a very interesting one about where Korean foreign policy is going and where probably a progressive president, where he's going to stand with Trump. Progressives, eventually, you mentioned anti-Americanism. Progressives have been traditionally anti-American in different forms, but that could change the whole articulation of anti-American liberal progressive attitudes within South Korea. So there's a lot of kind of issues being realigned here. So that's kind of my questions in my comments. I'll be very interested to hear your reaction to some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Watson. Okay, covering even the Korean issue. Okay,
I have to.
yeah, right. Okay, June 3rd, there will be presidential election
Yes.
in Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very important election. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Anyway, okay, Professor Datta. Okay. Yeah, the three questions. Okay, from Iwan. Okay.
Yeah, I would say in terms of where are the Democrats, at best we've had Bernie Sanders and AOC go on this tour, but I don't know where the Dems are. I've written to my congressional leaders. Um, I think everybody is afraid and shocked, and it's the power of fear.
Yes.
And I think also getting to Mikio's comments, I don't think I'm seeing things so much as nativist versus globalist.
Mhm.
I'm seeing hyper misogynistic, white supremacist, um, domination sort of thinking. And whether it's the rise of the AfD in Germany or the far right in the United States, I think we're seeing white supremacist angry men or people who are not white, who think they're white, who are subscribing to whiteness, and they have absorbed this white supremacist thinking, and they want to hurt. They want to dominate women's bodies. They want to destroy. And I think something about that is very attractive for many, many men around the world on a very primal level. I don't understand it. It's just an intuition that I've got in what may explain the raw appeal of Trump, who I think, to Mary Jo's point, he's obviously not leading everything by himself, but there's something about his charisma. There's something about the charisma he's got, like Mussolini or Hitler. It is addictive, and he has it. And he's inspiring so many people around the world to tune into that misogyny and white supremacy. And it's working, and it works brilliantly. I think Germany is going to turn over. I think that this lid of authoritarianism, it won't stop. Um, and so what does this mean for NATO? What does it mean for the South Korea, Japan, East Asian realignment? At this point, I think the only answer is um, whoever can instill the greatest fear will get elected. And those leaders who get elected, whoever's going to win in South Korea in the coming weeks, hopefully, I'm starting to learn about the candidates, but I know at least one of them is seen as Trumpish. Um, so whoever can manipulate that fear, I think, is going to win, and it's just going to lead to more authoritarianism. If the United States pulls out of NATO financially and militarily, I don't know what that would look like. Um, so those are unanswered questions that I'm also reflecting on.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, still any members who are still want to raise question or add more comments? Okay, I'd like to have 5 minutes or around 5 or 10 minutes if you want. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Zam. Okay. I was waiting for you. Okay. Okay.
You're waiting for me. Usually,
You promised that you are roommate. You are looking forward to your roommate.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I was waiting for Mikio to give his comment first. Yeah, my former office mate when we were students together. You know, uh, Thank you for the comment. In the previous comment, talk about where's the Democrats, what's happening to the opposition. I'm still wondering. I'm still thinking. I mean, although Monty give also some answers to that, but I'm still unsure. Why is it that the opposition lacks the courage, to approach the situation, from a slightly more aggressive angle, even, or if you want to, I mean, whatever angle that you want to use, but to do it in a more, uh, more, how do you call it? I don't want to use the word forceful, but more, to take more initiatives, to do something, to to at least, inform the masses that, hey, we are not happy with the situation, and let's do something about it. And I was just wondering, why are the opposition leaders not taking the initiatives to do these things? You mentioned even the former presidents, Obama and the others. I mean, this silence is quite, deafening, and I'm still not sure why, And my thinking is that, in many conflict situations, when people don't fight, it's not only because they fear the power, but also, they feel that they have a lot of interest at stake, and they don't want to lose whatever it is what little they have already, if they pursue aggressively against, the power, so they're just hanging on and simply waiting and waiting. And sometimes, for people to move, they need to be desperate. So is it possible that the situation is still to them not desperate enough? Because when people are desperate, then that will get them to move, to do something. And people still feel that, well, whatever it is not desperate enough, and we still have our, our interests, our jobs, and all those things, and we wait, for, you say, the midterm election, and we'll see how it goes. But while at the same time, things are getting worse and worse and worse, so where can we get, what can we do now? Are we waiting for things to get even worse to do something? Are we waiting for the people to be even more desperate to do something? So I think that's something that we need to consider. We need to consider. I know I work in many conflict areas. When people feel desperate, finally they will do something. Drastically in whatever means. So to me, basically, the American people, whatever they say about Trump, they don't feel that the situation is desperate enough. This is desperate enough. And do we need then to do things, in order to make it even more desperate, to transform the situation? And my feeling is also, I mean, why is it that Trump is so popular and so powerful now? I don't think this is something that suddenly has come up, during this past year. And then I have a feeling that, the feeling of anger and hatred and all these things have always been there, simmering under the surface. And you just need someone to trigger, to make a trigger, and to lead, to lead forward, to bring those feelings up. So my sense is that those feelings are already there. Those feelings are already there. And whatever it is that we have done over the years in terms of reconciliation, in terms of unity, trying to create a better environment in the US among the American publics, have not really worked, because the feeling is still there. The feeling of racism, the feeling of discrimination and all those things, they have been there. You just need something to trigger, and Trump is the trigger, and people just join on them. I'll give you an example. One of my auntie, is married to an American guy, very nice guy. They got married in the 80s. I was there for the wedding. It was in Alabama. He's from Alabama. Okay, down south. A very nice guy. I like him. We never talk about politics because I know that politics can be rather, difficult to talk about. He's always been an open person and all these things. But when it comes, I mean, in the past year, when it comes to Trump, suddenly I see and I hear from him a lot of comments, and he mentioned how Trump is a great guy, making America great again, and this is the person we need to, to to get the American power going on again and all those things, and he has praises and praises of Trump, and I was shocked. I never knew him to be like that. All these years that I've known him, over almost 40 years I've known him, and I never felt it like that. But suddenly, when you have the situation like this, it sort of like triggered him, to talk about his personal feelings about the situation in the US, and to me I was a bit surprised because some of the things that he mentioned even sounded like racist to me, and I never knew him to be that way. So but I just kept my mouth shut because his family, and I don't want to do to get things worse with my auntie. But I was disappointed, and so I felt that it's been there all along, but it has not had the chance to come out, and you need a trigger, for something like this to happen. So I don't know. I don't have any questions apart from that earlier part where I was asking about why the oppositions have not done enough, and then if we need to make the situation even worse, or do we wait for the situation to get even worse, uh, then and for us from outside of America, from outside of the States, there's not much that we can do to help improve the situation there. As always, we always feel that any kind of transformation needs to be done from within. So it's up to the American people and the leadership of the American people to go against this onslaught of authoritarianism in the US. But then we can give our support in whatever way that we can, and give our prayers for things to change. And so that's it. Enough of my rambling. Thank you, Montai.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Zam. Okay. Okay, Montai, would you like to respond?
Yeah, those are great comments. And I was thinking, why hasn't Barack Obama responded? And if he did respond, I could see Trump revoking his security clearance and for 6 months humiliating Michelle Obama publicly, calling her names, insulting her, and he won't stop. The bully is winning. And I think we're seeing somebody who has everybody afraid. Um, I I think the only person who has spoken out so far really is Bernie Sanders. Um, but with that exception, and maybe AOC, or the other thing is people have interest at stake. It might be that the Democratic elites are more afraid of losing their wealth or status or power than defending the common interest. Or to your other point, Zam, it just might be we're not at that point where people feel urgent enough to speak up and act until it's too late. That could be the other situation. Otherwise, I really appreciate your comments. And I think you're quite right in that this has always been here in America. And I think Trump is just an unmasking of who we've always been as a nation. And there's something about him and his DNA that people find deeply appealing. And demographically, as we see the white majority declining in America, you're only going to see more people like Trump rise to power. And, some political scientists worry this might lead to a second civil war. I'm reminded of something my meditation teacher has always said to me. He's always said to me that the United States is the most powerful nation in the world, but the only way America can ever be destroyed is from within. And I think we're seeing the seeds of that right now with this political divide and a lack of anybody willing to stand up until it might be too late. So I really appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you, Monti. Okay, I'd like to make a comment or just a very simple question. Okay, in your presentation, you mentioned like the losing or decreasing the soft power. I think is very important, and we expect the global leadership by the United Nations, one of the superpowers. I used to watch or use the Voice of America, but suddenly it stopped. Okay, it's stopped. Already you mentioned, and the U.S. aid. I don't know exactly the cause of the problem, but in many developing countries, the role of U.S. aid is contribute there like what. Activities or developing program or something, but they stop it. Okay, the administration just stop it. So, do you think there will be restored in the when the new administration, I mean the new leadership was established, or some? What do you think of? I think because I thought is a very important soft power, one of the soft powers. Okay.
Yeah, Sung-Ho, soft power, the ability to lead by persuasion and attraction. And just thinking about Professor Nye, who just died recently, the father of soft power, U.S. foreign aid, USAID, the voice of America, that was all soft power. And that's all been cut off now. If we have a Democratic president in 3 years, maybe if I keep thinking the only person who can beat Trump is Brad Pitt. If Brad Pitt ran for president, he would win because he's Brad Pitt, right? He's cool enough that he'd win. Um, that's the only candidate I can think of. So if Brad Pitt were to magically become president and he said, let's put back VOA, let's put back USAID. I think all of the thousands of US foreign aid workers who have been fired and humiliated, I don't think they'd come back. I think they are angry. I think they are bitter. I think they're going to the private sector. When you humiliate thousands of US government employees, they will feel betrayed. And what I really worry about, Sung-Ho, is as you know, we live in a world with pandemics, and USAID did a lot of good work on fighting Ebola. All of those aid workers who were helping fight Ebola, I think they've gone home. And so if we do have a next super pandemic, it could be a lot worse than COVID, but the aid workers there to stop it won't be there. So I really hope we get the return of soft power, but the other research that says, the decline of America's soft power will lead to the rise of soft power of another nation like China, but it'll be different. It'll be based on different values. And so we will see other countries rise up, but it'll reshape that power vacuum that was once the United States. And so that sweet voice of the voice of America, if it does come back, it won't be the same. It'll be different.
Okay. Yeah, okay, Mary Jo. Okay. Still you'd like to join? Okay.
I'll just add a comment. You know, I agree. Fear is a major factor. The game, the bullying it's like mixed martial arts. It's fast, it's brutal, there are no rules. I think what's happening now is that it's as if you asked a soccer player to play American football. I mean, the people that represent the philosophy that I would espouse, the Democratic Party, I'm disappointed actually in the former leadership, if I'm honest. So there's a lag time here. There's an issue of the age, the entrenched interest. It isn't as if the 50% that I'm going to say at least 50% of the citizens in the United States are not bullies. I'm going to say a lot of people are confused. They were attracted to the idea that their lives would change dramatically economically, etc. I have a lot of hope and faith in emerging generations and emerging leadership. True, Bernie Sanders is a powerful voice. I'm in Massachusetts. Elizabeth Warren is here, and we have some other very strong voices. But the issue is timing, because what happened, it wasn't just the Christian nationalist. And by the way, don't forget that religious aspect to this, because it gave it a holy dimension. What also happened was the promise that a businessman would change everyone's lives, that business interest. Why are we paying attention to the rest of the world? We have people here who are in poverty, and we do. So I think the timing of this rapid series of executive orders, changes and disruption of the system, the timing when new leadership will emerge, I believe it is going to come, but the timing has to be right. It can't be at a time where the dominance of the media is so sophisticated. The headline every single day is Trump. Every single day. That's no accident. So, but I'll just add a little spirit of hope here. I just read about the valedictorian speaker at George Washington University. Did you see her speech? She, look it up. She stood up and she challenged it. She gave the administration one speech. She stood up and gave a completely different speech. And she's challenging the international support for what is happening in terms of extreme violence. She's challenging the way the university is. She was unbelievable, but she's not the only one. Young people are starting to speak up, and they are smart and they're determined, and they represent an awareness. We were just talking about global South awareness of the extremes of power that have been dominating so many parts of the world. There's also within the United States a much stronger awareness of, wait a minute, that's how the system worked. So I believe people's eyes are opened, not just in the global South, but within the United States. So I just wanted to add a little more hopeful belief in the spirit that established this country in the Constitution. That represents a certain philosophy of enlightenment that's still strong, and in our education system, in professors like you, Monti. I believe there's a strength, but the timing is important, and also we're trying to understand what are the rules of this new game. You can't put someone who doesn't know mixed martial arts into that ring. You cannot. You've got to understand, what are they doing? And that's where we are. There's a lag time here. Don't give up on us. There's a lag time.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Okay. Okay, I'd like to invite Monti, okay, Professor Datta, to you say your closing remarks, okay?
Yeah, thank you to Sung Ho, and thank you to everybody for their comments, also reflecting what Mary Jo just shared. I do think ultimately this does come down to how do we inspire others or teach others to do the right thing? So I'm thinking about my own pedagogy for the fall semester. When I know statistically, at least half of my incoming first year students will be very pro-Trump. So how do I spread the right message of love and compassion, but to do so in a way that instills meaningful change? And so as I think about all of the comments today on today's forum, I'm reminded of two things. Number one, we have a diverse view of differing opinions. And number two, I think the key to moving forward in a healthy way is threading together the best of who we are as a fabric. So thinking about, I've been following Manuel's comments. I'm also reminded of what's been shared by everybody else. We have to somehow pull the best of who we are together so that we cannot turn against one another, and instead we can identify with one another in a way that minimizes the fear, minimizes the bullying, and instead inspires more humility and acceptance and vulnerability. I don't know President Trump, but I have this theory that he probably had a really rough time as a young man, and he was never taught positive masculinity. He was never taught how to respect a woman, and he was never taught on how to respect the community. But if we can instill those values in our students and next generation, I think we can stop the bullying and do it in a way that is sustainable and powerful. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Monti. Okay. Thank you for your presentation, and also thank you all members for your participation in very, very productive discussions. And I felt that while attending this forum, one more time, I thought the leadership is very important, okay? National leadership. Already, last forum, okay, our topic was cooperative leadership, okay? What this presented by the speaker from UK at the time, and at the time the Rebecca arrived here from the state, okay, somewhat late, and she's suggested that instead of the seniors, our senior group leadership discussion, we need young leaders. I mean the youth, our future leaders. They will discuss the leadership. So I accepted that proposal, and I already talked to some of my colleagues from the Philippines, and they accepted. And I also recommend Michelle, our intern, my intern here, you volunteer to participate in this, this youth forum as a speaker and representing Korea, because we have also leadership crisis here in Korea. Okay, we have leadership crisis, and not only Korea but in the Philippines and in I don't know the Thailand, but in many countries. So I'd like to some communicate with the other members here, like Mikio. Okay, I'd like to talk with you, and if you can recommend one the speaker from your there's some. What students, okay, I'd like to choose 3 members, okay, from already the Professor Bernard, he accepted, okay, and we have already scheduled a Saturday discussing the youth forum online, okay, July 10th, okay, July 10th is coincidentally our offline forum, our offline conference, okay, even though it's a small size this year, mostly, Korea, Japan, and China speakers, okay? And the language will be Korean, okay? To save our some expenses. So I could not invite you, some international members, but we'd like to include youth forum, online youth forum, okay, on the day, okay? So there will be the leadership, okay? So I'll share more information July 10th, okay, in our Thursday forum, okay? And also I'll announce our next schedule 2 weeks later, okay? Every 2 weeks, we hold our forum until July 10th, okay? Next year, June 12th, okay, speaker is here, okay, Professor Mikio Oishi, okay, your turn. And the topic is very interesting. Particularly this year is the anniversary or commemoration of the 80th, year of the end of World War II, okay, or the Korean side liberation, the 80th, the anniversary of our independence or liberation, even the Philippine Manila or something. Okay, many implications. So the topic is building a Northeast Asian community. Okay, Northeast Asian community. We have many problems here, Northeast Asia. Okay, and historical reconciliation. ASEAN's insights and prospects for regional integration. Okay, so that is a big topic. Okay, very good. And our expert, the Mikio Oishi, the regional cooperation, particularly like ASEAN issue, and also how to apply this ASEAN the case strategy to this Northeast Asian cooperation, okay, integration or something. Okay, so okay, up to late. Okay, thank you for joining and staying here, and hope to see you next forum if you are available, if you can spare time. Okay, so we should say bye bye here. Okay, so everybody bye bye and take a good care,
bye-bye.
and see you again. Okay, okay, take good care. Thank you, Monti.
Thank you.
See you in person
Thank you,
here.
everybody.
Everybody, okay. Bye. And the dating, thank you. Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.